Fantastic. Thanks very much. It's nice to have a very full room, particularly on such an auspicious day with all kinds of great FEC activities. So how inadvisable it is on Bitcoin. Members of the commission, the auditor was in, Director Meyer, and myself, and we have a full agenda. Let's begin with minutes from the first May 8th meeting. Is there any correction to the minutes? Any comments on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Aye. Yeah. Passed. For those in the audience, we have minutes being taken in my office. Ryan, do you know if we have a Zoom link correctly initiated so that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. Betsy, you said there were some people that were joining us via Zoom.
Yes, there are people that can participate by Zoom, and then I believe Brian can see when people have raised their hand if they would like to speak.
Very good. Agenda, another agenda. Okay, members, you have before you also an agenda. Are there additions or changes to the agenda you'd like to consider? Hearing none, we will move on to commission membership and structure. Betsy, I don't know if you and I had a chance to go through this. So I'm just going to put you on the spot just because that's fun to do. You have you report on please fill the end. Couple of recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, yes, the first thing on the agenda is a discussion of potentially subject matter experts, because the statute says that you can appoint up to 4 subject matter experts to serve as commissioners on a majority vote of the commission members. And we did put on all 3 of your websites a link for people that are interested to express their interests. We also put out a press release. I think I actually said something at the Select Blockchain Committee as well, hoping to encourage people to put their names in. And you should have in the information that was sent out the list of people that were interested, but I can go ahead and read those names if you want. That's fine.
Read the names, yeah, sure.
And I think there are people that are interested that may not be on this list, but and I can give the name and where they work or what their background is. The first one is David Pope with DAPCPA Pope in Jackson, Inc. Flavia Neves with Circle, Brian Bishop with Webcache LLC, Chris Cameron with GFX Labs, Jeff Wallace with Wyoming Bank and Trust, Richard Ressler Mutter with University of Wyoming, and Jay Yang with Tyson Inc. And then I am aware of one other person that emailed communicated, and that's Joel Bell with 2 Ocean.
If you were here for the first meeting, you'll remember we had discussion about conflict of interest. And it is pretty clear that if you plan to participate on, and correct me if I'm off on this, but if you're planning to participate in the offering in some way, other than presume probably being able to acquire some of the coins at a later date, that would, if you're in any way providing a service, that constitutes a conflict of interest. So with that, members of the commission, I guess I'd open it to your thoughts as to what particular thoughts you have about who you want to have on the commission. And I know Senator Rothfuss, you and I had a conversation about a couple of individuals. It does seem, it may be at a very high level, just your thoughts on what we need, and then we can talk to personalities as we get through.
Yeah, Governor, I think that's an appropriate approach for it, probably, which would be figuring out what the skill sets. And I think there was some discussion of that at the last commission meeting, what skill sets you would want those 4 roles to represent, and then finding appropriate individuals or selecting from those that have offered to serve those skill sets. So you can imagine one that has high technical expertise in digital assets, legal expertise in digital assets, somebody from finance sector and industry that understands the positioning of this with regard to financial institutions, how it would be incorporated, and that might then help to inform selection of financial institution partnerships. And then that 4th category, I guess, would probably be something to talk through exactly where from the other 3 you might be missing some skills along the way, or what other needs you would have. But I think that will go a long ways towards achieving objectives of the implementation and having the necessary expertise for the conversations, as well as for leading the working groups that I know you were talking about, subcommittees or whatever you want to call them, having the capacity to get those jobs done.
Mr. Treasurer.
Without having to go through all of this, I don't know if would be able to categorize the candidates who have, I guess, put their names in the hat into those 4 categories. So we've got candidates and 2 candidates and 1 candidate category. We can, those are areas where we might have to make a decision. But I would say that I would hope that we're looking. I hope that a subcommittee structure, and I think that all of these people have put their names down as commission candidates, but certainly, well, subcommittee structure. It's more or less, the title doesn't mean that much. It's really the participation, I think, is what we're looking at. So I wouldn't get hung up on a title of commissioner or subcommittee member. Yeah.
I think that's wisely said, Mr. Treasurer.
Mr. Chairman, I would, given our discussion last meeting and your comments leading off, I think we already have a couple folks from the list that Betsy read that have sort of self-selected out if they would not be able to bid on the project. So I'm wondering if we couldn't refine our list. I feel like there's 9 folks on the Google form plus the additional name. And I wouldn't know what the answer to that question is for that additional name, but I feel like there's a couple people that we could maybe remove from that list before we delve in, being that they've already said, gosh, if that's going to be the situation, they would maybe decline from being a commissioner.
Thoughts on how to do that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think on the, and Betsy help me out, I'm building DRL, a little bit late as we fly. It seems that Mr. Chris Cameron has answered that question in the negative. as has Jay Yang. And then H. Sharma. That part, but you. Go. H. Sharma, so that's online.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I actually had dated information, with a couple more names. And they- Sorry, those are two names that I did not read. And the auditor is correct. I mean, the question was asked, would you still be interested in serving if you would be precluded from providing any services? And apologies for name pronunciation, but Mr. Sharma has said they would not be interested in serving, and as Chris Cameron and Jay Yang were the three that answered that question in the negative. So that would leave the other six. It's still. So.
Mr. Chairman, one quick question, Betsy. Mr. Ravel's 202, do you have any idea if he would be interested in serving given the
Mr. Chairman, Auditor, I believe he would. I believe he's participating in the Zoom call, so he could speak for himself. But I think the only potential conflict right now for him is he is on the select blockchain committee as one of the governor's liaison. And so he was curious if that was a conflict. And then he does have clients that might purchase a stable token at some point in the future. And would he be precluded in doing that for his clients? So that was kind of the questions. So.
All right, for those online.
The ceiling mics are just not picking it up very well.
That working now? I hear my voice. Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's on, I guess.
So, Mr. Ravel, do you want to speak for yourself on this matter?
Citizens allowed to talk. Did any response yet?
Hello, this is Joel. Can you hear me?
There it is. worth it.
Go ahead, Mr. Rebel.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We can.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman, the audio wasn't completely clear. And wasn't sure if you'd asked a question of me. Would you mind repeating the question, please?
Sure. Betsy indicated that you might be interested in serving on the commission. We were interested in your thoughts on that, and then if there were any particular issues with specific regard to potential conflicts of interest.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would be. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's the treasurer. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would be interested in serving on the commission. Would be an honor to do so. As Ms. Anderson pointed out, the potential conflict of interest would be my position as your appointee to the the Wyoming Blockchain Select Committee. I do serve as the CEO of Two Ocean Trust, which is a financial institution operating in Wyoming and providing custody for traditional and digital assets. So there would be a potential that a client would ask us to hold in custody a Wyoming stable token. So that was an additional question that I'd raised in terms of a conflict of interest. I'm happy to share my opinion on that, but I don't know if I'm the right person to be making that assessment.
Randy, do you want to? You were sitting there smiling at me. So I was going to actually wait and let you opine at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Governor. I don't believe that having someone who is your appointee to the committee would cause a problem at all. That doesn't seem to be any sort of conflict. I know that we've shared with you our memo on the different conflict of law statutes and what the legislation itself says. But at this point, I don't know that just the future chance that there may be a conflict would conflict somebody from actually serving on the committee. They may have to leave if there arose an actual conflict in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Joel. Well, very good. Members of the commission, what are your thoughts? We have several good names, and I know, Chris, you had gone to Flavia, and is Flavia here?
Online.
Flavia, it seems you have experience, and I'd love to provide you this. And I'm using your first name because I don't know how to pronounce your second name. So I was hoping that you might be able to just tell us a little bit about your experience and the serendipitous opportunity that this commission has.
I will be happy to. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Thank you so much. My name is pronounced Flavia Naves. I'm originally from Brazil, so it's not a usual name in the US. I appreciate that. I currently serve as Circle's general counsel. As many of you may know, Circle is a stablecoin issuer. We issue a token called USDC, and I've served as Circle's general counsel for the past 3 years. I'll be leaving my seat at the end of this month, and I had spoken to certain members of this group about the potential of supporting Wyoming as we engage in the issuance of a stable token. As the general counsel of Circle, I have not only established a regulatory regime for our company vis-a-vis from a federal and state regulatory perspective, such as securities laws, as well as money transmission and banking requirements, but also supported the development of our compliance program. We have a compliance and risk officer in place, who is my colleague and partner, as well as a policy team that advises us on upcoming legislative matters. So overseeing the legal matters for Circle and USDC in itself, I'm keenly aware of the challenges that industry participants, especially fiat-backed stablecoin issuers, face in entering the market, not only from a legal perspective, but also from an operational perspective of how to best position the token, use case for it, how to safeguard the reserves, how to attest for the reserve completeness on a monthly basis, work with internal and external auditors, all facets of running this business. So I will be happy to contribute my knowledge and to this commission, and hope to see this token come to fruition and be successful.
Thank you, Ms. Navis. Members of the commission, it seems that we're sort of walking down through a number of people. I might as well listen to each of them. Does that make sense to you?
That's fine.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
slightly out of order, but I would note, look closer at the links and documents submitted by Mr. Apollo. They appear to be applying for the consultant role and do not express an interest in being a SME. So that one I think can be crossed off this consideration.
If Mr. Apollo is online, can you can you verify that?
Commissioner, I am present.
There you are.
No, I'm here. I can confirm.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Very good. So I'm gonna just walk down from the top of the list then. David Pope, I saw him prowling about earlier. David, want to just address the commission briefly, your interests and
Certainly, I am certainly interested in either a spot on the commission or in one of the working groups. I have the only potential conflict of interest that I had thought about, I actually hadn't thought about until Mr. Revel spoke about his clients that may in the future at some point purchase some of the stable tokens, but which I have a stable of clients as well, so I have no idea if any of them would take that action in the future. Currently, a person on Wyoming stable tokens. I have been an accountant for 35 years this year, and I've been a Wyoming CPA since 1996. I was a co-founder of the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition back in 2017, which we helped start this whole process. I have served on the blockchain task force, the legislative blockchain task force, and I have commented on and helped conceptualize many of the bills that have come through the legislature. I at one point had a small governmental audit practice, and I have worked with many accountants within the industry that audit digital assets. So from an audit and compliance standpoint, that's where I would be viewing much of my work with the commission. The final thing to say is that I understand a business plan. I understand how to bring products to market through my years of experience in accounting. And that, I believe, seeing the entire process would help me to help the commission.
thank you, Mr. Pope. Appreciate it. Any questions? Hearing none. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop here. Mr. Bishop online.
Yes, I'm here.
Bishop, I'm sorry for the sort of lugubrious way we're going through this, but this is your opportunity to kind of address the commission.
Of course, thank you very much. So my background is in software development. I've worked on open source cryptocurrency projects such as Bitcoin. I was previously a software engineer at LedgerX, the first federally regulated Bitcoin options exchange, where I'm now on the board of directors. I was also co-founder and CTO at Custodia Bank, previously Avanti Bank with Caitlin Long in Wyoming. Of interest to this commission is my project webcash.org, which is a Wyoming limited liability company running a digital currency. It is not a stable token or stable coins, but it is a project located in Wyoming. Yeah, that's the high level overview.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Bishop? Hearing none. Mr. Wallace. Good to see you here. Thank you very much.
My name is Jeff Wallace. I am CEO of Wyoming Bank and Trust in Cheyenne. 2 offices in Wyoming, chartered bank in Wyoming for over 100 years. And I know I'm not supposed to mention that because this is modern. I guess as far as my interest, as far as like crypto goes, I was buying Bitcoin back when it was illegal in Wyoming, opening a Coinbase account before all this started. So I have had some interest in the field. What I think I could possibly bring to the commission is my traditional banking background, as far as some of the things that the stable coin is going to have to deal with, as far as BSA, KYC, some of the regulatory aspects. So I guess that's what I have to offer.
Thank you. Yes. You know, one question that I have, and at the risk of me challenging on this, you know, there are many segments of asset custody in this realm, and some are larger, some are smaller. It particularly offends me that Bank of New York Mellon got approval to go ahead and custody digital assets, and you know, community banks in Wyoming that have never posed the systemic risk, or somehow it seems to me being discriminated against. I didn't know if you had any opinions on that matter, and if you thought there was a way that we could figure out how to make community banks stronger and better.
I guess, you know, my opinion on that is when they say we have a dual banking system, I didn't think that it meant there was advantages over being a national bank versus a state bank. So I think that's definitely something that we need to address, as far as giving advantages to national banks that the state banks wouldn't have. I'm not sure any of our state banks at this point are prepared to be issuing any stable coins or anything like that. But I think if there's a business case for it, I think we would certainly be open to looking at the possibilities of having the opportunity.
And then, you know, the other issue, and you know, we have all these different regulatory structures in the banking sector. Wyoming, obviously, we want to have state chartered banks. I mean, getting into a little bit of a different thing, but it is true that whether we have speedies or whether we have Wyoming chartered banks, we want to make sure that they're protected and they're in good shape. It is particularly frustrating to me that we have the OCC, Office of the Control of the Currency, that seems to be able to, on occasion, go out of bounds. And so with your experience in the banking sector and the experience across the sort of various platforms in different administrations, do you see that there can be a home not only for good community, strong community banking sector, but also possibility for innovation like speedies in Wyoming, without having to wait for our federal overlords, sometimes thinking they are in control.
I think that's very challenging. Because even if we are a state bank, you know, our federal regulators still have a lot of sway over us as well. But I think, you know, if we can show the federal regulators that it's, you know, a well thought out process and well regulated by the state, I think that gives us that opportunity to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, any other questions?
Just a little bit. I see some areas where stable token have to be a partnership with Wyoming's banking in a lot of different ways. And I think to me, it actually offered opportunity to Wyoming's banking industry to provide a lot of the services that you're doing now in our, excuse me, oh, that's all right. To provide a lot of the services that you do now at maybe in a more atmosphere, you know, versus a national bank or versus other financial institutions. So, you know, I hope that if you continue participating in this process, that we can kind of flesh out some of those opportunities that I kind of envision and maybe lead down some pathways to make the Wyoming financial institutions a lot stronger in Wyoming.
And that was kind of one of our arguments when all speedy bank legislation was passed, was there's not a lot of things that a speedy bank couldn't do under a state charter right now. So I think there is some opportunity there with state banks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jeff, Mr. Mutter. Mr. Mutter here, Mr. Mutter, Richard. One more time? No. Okay. And I think that brings us, if the person you gave me is correct, I think you've heard from everyone, is that correct? Andre? All right.
Mr. Chairman, with Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, you said that, you know, you had done some programming. I'm just wondering what languages that you're familiar with in your programming aspect of digital currencies, or otherwise any other kind of programming language.
You know, at this point, I've dealt with so many different programming languages, it's hard to keep track. I certainly have my favorites. I often work with Python and JavaScript as some of my favorites.
Thank you. We've got a man in our shop that does a lot of Python, and he's been playing around with a language called Go that he's actually, I think, liking that better than Python. He's been a Python programmer for, I don't know, a long time, but that's when he's starting to use more and more.
I certainly hear that a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. The members without objection, what I'd like to do is open the floor for anyone that might have a particular thought about particular expertise that we should make sure we have on board, potential pitfalls that we should be aware of that hopefully might do that. And I just offer that opportunity for a few minutes, if that's okay with you. All right, we are sort of struggling through this, and it's painful, but hopefully we get to the right place at the right time. So if that's the case, then is there anyone that would like to speak to the commission about particular levels of expertise that we should make sure that we have in place, or potential pitfalls that we should be aware of and not overlook what expertise we need to have. In the back, yes.
Should I come up?
Yeah, please do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jay Yang. I'm CEO of Tassin Incorporated. We're a blockchain company located in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak. And I think that one of the most important thing, having written software professionally for about 18 years, worked in the defense sector where, mission criticality means everything because it saves lives, as well as in the commercial sector in large company where a high throughput, transaction is very important. I think that whoever is selected for the commission should have thorough knowledge of systems architecture so that can actually evaluate different architectural considerations, whether it is integration with banks or using certain APIs, or what are some of the more important security measures being taken in order to deploy the software, what kind of security measures are being taken in terms of communication between different servers and services and applications. I think that a particular set of knowledge is very important in the success of such an important undertaking as a Wyoming stable token, especially because there is a blockchain component, and then there is going to be some sort of servers or applications that are running that are centralized. And so understanding what it means to run a high availability, highly reliable system, I think is very crucial to judging whether certain bids are of good quality, and then understanding what it takes to maintain those over long run. I think that's very important.
Thank you, Jay, and please, I don't know if any other questions. There were a couple of things that in our conversation that we had a little bit earlier that were intriguing to me, and of particular interest was the KYC AML piece of that. Is that a particular province of talent that a person needs to be aware of, or?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think that it is very important for developers to be aware of what regulations there are, because there's always a risk where project manager and compliance officers and developers have different understanding of what needs to be implemented. At my own company, I make sure that developers are well aware of what are the implications of writing and implementing software in a certain way. Because then what their understanding of what is within the bounds of law might not be, because they cut some corners or whatever it is. So I think that whoever is whether this person is going to serve in the commission, or whether this person is going to apply for a potential bid, should have sufficient knowledge both on the compliance side as well as on the software development side, so that this person can bridge the gap in the knowledge and talk the language of both groups involved.
Okay. Great. Yeah, please, Mr.
For organization of the architecture, I have your core code, but seems like there's different companies that specialize in different things that I would call maybe the future of partners add to that code, so you necessarily don't have to, build your own mobile app. There may be people out there that we may be able to, it's not basically out of the box, plug and play. There's definitely a lot of aspects to making different things work. But from that perspective, if you're starting, we are starting from ground zero. How much of it is actually the core part of it, and how much of it is modules that can be implemented within it. And I've heard that like you'll use Python or Go or something in the center structure, and then you'll need some C+ to go into Ethereum and different things to go to different areas, and so you actually end up with, me, it looks like a Christmas tree with lots of different lights and branches on it. And I'm just wondering, who's the main person that's actually gonna, I guess, design and decorate that tree? That's the question I've got. What's that?
That's an excellent question, Treasurer Meyer. I think that there needs to be a system architect that outlines how different systems are going to work together. And even if there's an external entity that this system would interact with, say banks or whatever it is, that at that point, we have to understand how secure communication between the two entities are going to be, what they call application programming interface is going to be like. And that's a way in which that these entities can communicate with one another easily, and the developers understand that language very well. Now, in order for a project like this to succeed, there needs to be a well-documented application programming interface on the other side, whether it be a bank, whether it be a third-party service or whatever it is, so that the primary integrator, in my humble opinion, for this project, understands well, what are the capabilities on the other side, and what are the information we can gather, what are some of the security considerations that should be made when making, requests over the internet, so to speak. And then there is also the matter of interacting with the blockchain itself, which requires quite a number of knowledge sets. So I think that, to directly answer your question, just as long as the potential components or plugins or vendors have well-documented system that is well vetted for, I think that primary integrator, whoever it may be, should be able to integrate and write all the glue codes that's necessary to do so. But it has to be already available.
The other thing, Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to get as much information as I can to get an understanding of this, is that there's a lot of different fintech out there, but it's not necessarily based on blockchain. I think Zelle, that's a very fast system. I've heard in blockchain, fastest number I heard is like 60,000 times faster than Bitcoin, but I don't know, what the speed is. I know there's trillions of transactions. I don't know if that's a day or a second when you look at the credit card system, and I don't know what capacity blockchain actually has to even make an impact like that. And then how do you interface with the point of sales systems, and whether that technology is readily available. I guess you could bounce on the back of PayPal. I don't know if you could bounce on the back of Zelle or not.
So to address the two parts of the question, first is, what are the reasonable expectation for transactions to be cleared or validated? Depends on which blockchain one would implement this single token in. Some blockchains are 11 seconds, for example, Ethereum network. Other blockchains can be as fast as 400 milliseconds. But it really depends on sort of like what is the decision of the committee on which blockchain has the least, in my humble opinion, which blockchain has the least amount of technical debt, what they call, which is it going to be hacked? Is it easy to be hacked, or is there sufficient amount of decentralization to be able to commit to some of the primary goals of the token? And so I think those are beyond my ability to judge at this point. However, even if, let's say, there were a system that supports multiple blockchains, whether it is in consideration or not is, I'm not sure. The redemption and deposit of the dollar amount through a banking integration would really determine what the user expectations are in terms of being able to get the dollar out. Now, if we're talking, and then the second part to answer your question, Treasurer Meyer, is if one were to use this stable token in more commerce-oriented way, which is hope for everybody, I believe, then the matter then is how can one ensure that the point of sales devices support that particular blockchain transaction, and then whether the retail customers have access to those. And then I think then the down select in terms of which blockchain to support in order for fast transactions to occur will be evident to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I guess a question that you don't have to answer now, but one of the ones that I've been trying to find out is how do we institute a proof of work system and how's it paid for and how does that reflect in, you know, the cost of transactions? And that's something we don't need to get into now, but that's something that I'm trying to figure out.
Appreciate it, Mr. Fraser. Thanks. Is there, Brian?
We have 3 online.
Three online, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Flavia.
Flavia?
Thank you guys so much. With at the risk of sounding a bit redundant of what was already discussed, I just want to make 3 points which were raised by the prior speaker. In the business plan for this token, one of the things to consider is going to be the stable, the blockchains in which this token is going to be offered through, right? There are many blockchains, not just one. And it's going to behoove the commission to understand which ones will drive the best benefit for the business plan for that token, right? Is it going to be one of them? Is it going to be 2, 3, 5, whatever they are? In assessing the blockchain, you're not only looking for where there is most traffic, but you're also for security of that blockchain. So having someone that has information security knowledge, that has been a CISO or someone in that capacity will be really important. And in addition, either to the commission or as a subcommittee in discussion. Another point to consider, and with someone who likely work closely with the treasurer on this, is someone that has understanding of financial risk for management of the reserves and placement of them. So to understand where the fiat currency is going to sit, which is going to be backing each one of these tokens that is going to be in circulation, you have all recently seen what happened to many of the banks that were banking this industry that have recently collapsed. It has not only debanked many industry participants, but also shown that just placing the reserves in bank accounts, where these bank accounts may not be insured over 250,000, can pose a risk to the reserve management. So someone that has experience in active reserve management of looking across the placement of the reserves and where they are for stability and how to quickly move them to preserve the reserves is really, really important. And then lastly is the point around compliance. So the Bank Secrecy Act applies to all parties involved in financial services transactions, and having someone that understands the on-ramp and off-ramp of these reserves and the obligations that will be in place to KYC these parties, the level of risk associated with these transactions and the level of KYC that needs to be done, as well as screening for sanctions and everything else. It's really important. So if we think about what subject matter expertise that will be in addition to the ones that were previously raised, I would say information security, financial risk, and absolutely BSA compliance.
In the area of risk, Flavia, we utilize the Aladdin risk system from BlackRock, and we have that fully implemented on our systems there, both in fixed income and in equity. So welcome we're actually going to do a demonstration on the fixed income here during the next CAP Finance Committee. So we do in-house trading and other trading. We're a certified investor. You can see our 13Fs every 90 days. So the shop is, I think, fully qualified to do that. Our custodial is JP Morgan, and all of the securities that we buy to back this stable token will be short-term treasuries as indicated by the statute, and we'll probably implement a ladder strategy so we have a great deal of liquidity.
Mr. Treasurer, I appreciate your comments. I think Ms. Nave brought a number of really important concerns tonight. with the detail that you're going to, I think is a little bit further down the pike, if that makes sense to you. And so, Ms. Alves, thank you very, very much for your comments. One quick question. With your experience, looking at single blockchain, multiple blockchains, being a government entity, and I have a legislator in the room here, would there be a challenge in procurement? We typically have to issue an RFP. There are some other ways that we can do it. But do you see a diligence there that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, I think running an RFP for a blockchain, I mean, you're not going to be able to, unless you're reaching out to Agrand or Solana or Ethereum and talking to a person on the other side to answer that RFP. And I understand the state's process, obviously, that is in place and needs to be followed through. The questions through the diligence process should be attending to information security considerations. You should have someone that is enabling, supporting you in drafting those questions to understand what to look for, what are the vulnerabilities of those chains that you should be looking at. There have been different instances of these chains having certain vulnerabilities that can be tracked just by doing a Google search, and you can identify when they had some any instance of vulnerability, and you can address those. But you should have someone that is an expert, and I'm not one of those, in the technical side of the blockchain development to ask those questions and anticipate the answers and anything else that the state would need to feel comfortable in placing the token in that chain. Because when you select chains, you're going to be addressing different needs. It's not only going to be your business plan, but also it's going to be the end user demand, right? You may start with 1 or 2 chains, and you may see users reach out to you and say, when you're going to make the token available in chain X, Y, and Z, right? And it's going to be behoove the commission to look at that time, to look at those requests at that time and assess whether, number one, it makes commercial sense to do so, number two, makes technical sense to do so, and how you're going to monitor that. Because the more chains that you have your token listed on, running on, the more, instances of vulnerability you're going to have to manage. So, and possibilities of loss. So this is what you need to be thinking through. But I would strongly recommend that in the drafting of those questions for the RFP process, that you have a technical expert in blockchain development with you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Nagas. Brian, said 2 more questions.
Ryan Bishop.
Mr. Bishop.
Thank you. Yeah, as a software developer, I think the question of architecture is very interesting, especially for a stable token. In this industry, there are often people playing favorites with regards to technology, especially around blockchain, just something to look out for. In fact, having worked on blockchain, I also went the other direction, and I worked on something that uses a database. And the advantage of a database is that it can be extremely fast. It's significantly faster than a blockchain. But in fact, what we see with tokens is that they are on multiple blockchains. And how do they do that if they are truly decentralized? Well, it's through accounting and having a central server with a database, and you are able to deploy tokens to other blockchains. So overall, I would just recommend humbly an open approach based on like requirements and goals of the stable token, not to a particular blockchain project or a particular architecture, but really around goals around, transaction rate perhaps, or whether a goal is permissionless innovation or KYC, whatever the case may be.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Questions? Questions? Okay.
Scott Moeller.
Mr. Moore.
Yes, can you hear me? This is Scott Moeller, one of the organizers of the American Crypto Fed DAO.
Yes, Mr. Muller, we can hear you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Also, Xiaoming Zhou is there physically as well, so I'm calling in. Really, I like to emphasize what Brian Bishop just said in his last statement on the open architecture, and enabling it so that this token can be operated on multiple chains as well. Really, the emphasis I'd like to make is that what is the underlying use case here, and that the intent is really to bring a new sustainable and growing revenue stream to the state, to benefit the state and all Wyoming citizens and residents. Through that, yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Was on.
No worries. No worries. Yeah, our intent has really been focused on the retail use case. And when I say retail, it's really thinking about retail as using this token for everyday transactions at the retailer. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to Joe. I think he's in front of you face to face.
Yes, there he is. And thank you, Joe. Good to see you.
My name is Sean Zhou. I'm one of the organizer of American Crypto Fest. So for the commissioner, originally we thought probably the CEO of Merchant Advisory Group is the best candidate to know in and out about the entire payment industry. But by thinking about conflict of interest, because he's currently working with about the top 160 US retailers, merchants, including all the big boxes you know. So we are going to discussing to deploy Wyoming stable token among those merchants. He's the CEO, he talking with all those merchants. So we think there are huge conflict of interest. So however, there do have a good candidate we just saw today. That's the former chair of that group. It's the chair at that group and know all the big merchant, know the payment in and out. He worked for a largest great retailer merchant. Scott is a co-host. Is he's a co-host?
Yeah, he the name is Troy Carruthers. He was senior vice president in charge of payments for Kohl's, the department store. So in charge of all the credit card, debit card, their internal points program, as well as their supply chain. He is a prior chairman of the Merchant Advisory Group, which Joe has mentioned. And I've mentioned in previous sessions, but for those people who are joining this commission for the first time, the Merchant Advisory Group has on average transactions close to $5 trillion per year. 60% of the credit card spend in the US goes through MAG retailers. And we envision using the Wyoming stable token to enable a zero cost transaction stream for these merchants. So leading to that, I think it would be wise for the commission to have, whether it's a commissioner or someone that is in a one of the subcommittees, but really focused on that retail use case, because it can be the benefits for Wyoming can just be astounding.
Okay. Next time I will ask him, he ask him to testify here and just the commission's questions.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Anyone else? Ms. DeVore.
I know, I definitely don't need to sit up there. I have a large enough hearing voice as it is. So on behalf of the bankers in the state, I really think bankers need a seat at the table. The discussion that everyone has brought up today is really centered around coding and blockchain. And I guarantee you, whether it's Jeff or Mike or any banker on the committee, we're not gonna be able to answer those questions. But what we do have is we have a wealth of historical knowledge of the actual operating of this. The regulatory world, I think Senator Rothfuss would remember 4 years ago, I reached out and said, you really need a banker sitting on that committee to give you that feel for the largest hurdle that the state, whether it be in the speedy space or this space, has to run up against is federal. We operate in that space every day. We have for 100 years, 18 years, Lord knows how many years. And it isn't about the law. And it isn't about only the rules. Any banker can tell you when you sit in an exam with an examiner, it's interpersonal, it's interpretation, and it is the caveats related to how it has worked, what today's focuses are versus tomorrow's focuses, all of those aspects, and bankers can bring that to the table. Now, this discussion's for a different day, but so much about what you're talking about today, point of sale, the MAG group. You are talking about a delivery mechanism, a payment system. So is that payment system different with a token than it is a debit card, than a check, than cash? It's all a mechanism to make a payment. When you're talking about the retail payment system, does it really matter the speed between 11 seconds for that transaction to get approved or however many milliseconds? No, KYC, BSA, all of those aspects apply, and not the legality of them, but how you actually carry them out on a business case day to day. Interest rate risk, all of those aspects. There's a whole new introduction of velocity risk. And we live that every single day. And probably should have been a part of this conversation many years ago, but need to be now. If the state wants to operate in this space, and with all due respect, not in our space, because you pretty much of what was talked about today sounds like a bank, and that's what we do. So if you want to operate in that space, you should leverage the expertise you have in the state of how to do it successfully in the federal regulatory environment. And there's a lot of discussion about, we'd love to see community banks get into this space. Community banks may want to get into this space, but until there's a federal framework, we're not willing to risk our charters to do so. But I really believe banks need to be involved in this conversation if the state really wants to bring forward the best end product that they can.
Well, thank you. Just to be responsive, I appreciate. I want you to know, I think this commission takes the charters of Wyoming banks incredibly seriously. We realize the reputation of the state, by extension, everything that we regulate is a bit an issue here, and we want to make sure that we don't run amok or fall down in that capacity. Lord knows it's tough enough now for a state chartered bank to do anything. When you have very large banks and you have a federal apparatus that to some degree, offers a barrier to entry. And I think one of the biggest concerns that I have personally is when regulation becomes a barrier for entry, it stifles innovation. Wyoming's small enough that I hope we can be innovative and participatory on a voluntary basis, so that perhaps rather than have our lunch eaten by China with the yuan, it's moving very quickly when our Federal Reserve can't even get out of its own way. And I speak from a little bit of experience there, that perhaps we can help foster payment methods, settlement, and different methods of settlement that can be very helpful and that an entire community of innovation, including banks, can participate in it, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. I would welcome the state come and stand behind the community banks that we already exist in this world. I'll tell you, I made a presentation to the Board of Governors in April about, they wanted to know what the barriers to innovation were. And I said, well, let me tell you about all the exciting, innovative things community banks have spent their time on for the last 5 years. Oh, we spent about 1.5 years on stress testing software. We spent 4 years on CECL implementation. We've spent Lord knows how much money and time in the AML, BSA space, trying to stay on top of all those regulations. There is not a lot of money left in a community bank budget for innovation. Trust me, you can ask any of us in the room, I'm pretty sure we would be all about innovation. We would welcome the state to help us break down some of those regulatory barriers for those of us who are already operating in this world and providing back to the state an inordinate amount of economic development, community support. We could use that, and then we would be happy. We also have really good relationships with our federal regulators. We have a voice at that level that we can also help get some of this framework built so that we can all operate in this space. I would encourage the state not to decide to just be a bank and do it for us.
You really know it. Thanks. Any other?
Okay, I'm headed home now.
All right. Members of the commission, here's my recommendation. We have 5 people that are indicated an interest, 5 people, 4 spots. Rather than go through that exercise now, what I would recommend is that we go on to establish potential subcommittees. We'll move with some alacrity. We've heard testimony here. We won't be this sort of pace, but let's try to get a couple of subcommittees lined out, or a few subcommittees lined out. We've heard testimony about technical operational aspects of today's discussions. So if that makes sense. Yeah. Chris, any particular thoughts on that?
Governor, I just note that I think having some further consideration is appropriate for commission candidates, giving that some thought and looking at subcommittee identification. I know, and I think others in the room know, members that would be very appropriate for those subcommittees, even though they aren't folks that we would select as commissioners. Many come to mind. I've had conversations with many. So moving those in parallel, I think is an appropriate approach. Identifying those committees that are the early priorities at this point would be welcome.
Fantastic. Treasurer.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think it's fine. I think we have at least 5 subcommittees. Even though we got 4 commissioners, I think that we might be able to set. I don't know if we need a commissioner to chair a subcommittee or not. What's your thought?
I think we just need subcommittees to do their work. So.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. But I looked at one of the first things that we need to do is to define the director's duties and define the token parameters. The other one was to appoint a subcommittee for stable token vendor RFP. And I think that the vendor RFP and defining the token parameters, that might be one committee, or we might choose to, define the token parameters ourselves, but we'd probably be a poor job of doing it here. So, the other subcommittee that I looked at was and that would probably be the second in a continuation of the director's duties, and that would be to to be the committee, subcommittee that would interview the director, after we have the, the process that we have to go through HR and all of that. The other one that we probably should be getting is a rule subcommittee and get started on that right away. And then a little later in the topic, or at least maybe is get a marketing subcommittee. And that people interested in marketing should probably be taking their thoughts to the token parameters in that regard. So I think, what do we got in subcommittees now? Six.
You've got 5.
Got 5 because we have one that carries on to the next one. Yeah, so those are I think the first ones that we've got. And then, there's some discussion about, I think, what we want to accomplish first. We've got statutorily, we have to mint a coin by the end of the year. But I think there's a lot of advanced some functionality of that token that, may go on after the end of the year. And so this may take us quite a while to actually build what we actually need to have. But, I think we meet our statutory duties first. But at the same time, look at, what type of wallet or interfaces we need, partners that we might identify with. So, those are the, I guess, the main things I think that gets us moving along. And I might have left out one if I did, vendor RFP. I think that comes after, that reviewing that. I think that comes after the other committee.
All right. Madam Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree that I think, first things first, crafting the job posting in JCQ for the director is maybe of paramount importance. Partially because then we have a warm, live, paid body that can help with everything after. My knee-jerk reaction is 6 subcommittees is an awful lot of hats to herd before we have a director on board. I think the structure is fine. I do think some of those can wait. But I do, and whether you envision selection of a director through the subcommittee or the entire commission, I guess that would be my question, but I do think that's paramount. I think the other structures mentioned, again, were fine, but I do think that maybe some of those might be a little bit down the road at a point where we can handle it a little bit better.
Mr. Chairman, and I do put some of them down the road, but I think it's the fastest I thought that we could patent probably actually put somebody in the seat as a director would be August 10th. And that's just looking at, some of the experiences that I know, unless, there's a possibility that you could fast track some of the folks at HR, but even then you still have, it's going to be at least 30 days that you have to, have an RFP on some of those things or advertise it for people. But if we've got a good idea who the director is going to be, we could go right to the end of the line and say, yeah, there's somebody, but we don't have to look at anybody else if that person exists. So there are some shortcuts, but a lot of it is just, as the auditor, I think, aptly described the last meeting, that there are timelines, and timelines take time. And these are areas.
Sure. There are 2 committees that I think are important that weren't in your list, Mr. Treasurer. One is regulatory and legal. There needs to be some effort put into understanding where the opportunities are, how legal they are, what they can proceed with. And I think the second one is the relationship to the state's regulatory authority. I'm particularly concerned about this because if there is for some reason a challenge that is unforeseen, I do not want it taking down our state's regulatory structure. So those two, I think, would be also key. So I think you have the directors putting together the director's job description that works with the treasurer's idea, and also thinking about the parameters of the token, regulatory relationship structure, and then interview questions, and start working on the vendor RFP. I think all the others you said came later. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, at the risk of maybe going ahead of the process and looking at your direction on legal and the different aspects in that arena, and I don't know whether we have to have. I don't think we have to have all of our commission candidates, or I mean, going forward at the same time. But I feel comfortable because of the areas of expertise of appointing that fellow novice as a new commissioner, because I think that individual has the areas of expertise that we need to get started, and may keep us from starting and stopping in different directions or hitting the cart ahead of the horse in different areas.
I think every one of these individuals is a good candidate. I just didn't want to have a
Jump
yeah.
Okay, all right. Very much.
Yeah. Chris.
A couple of thoughts based on that discussion. One is, it does seem like the token specification is a great early priority.
Yep.
Concurrently with, and obviously not finalized, if we're moving that path, the director getting that going is also a top priority. Those seem like the two immediate priorities to get going. And then with the commission candidates, nothing says you have to select all four right away, and maybe an appropriate move, although I don't know how to facilitate it, would be for the commission to come up with 2 or 3 to select from for the next meeting based on priorities, what early actions need to be taken, and then have a couple of players to be named later based on better understanding of who it is a little unclear, all of the directions and all of the demands that will be out there. So there might be expertise that surfaces as well. So just a few thoughts.
Yeah.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, that necessarily wouldn't have to select commissioners, but maybe we could ask different individuals to chair one of these subcommittees, or ask for volunteers from that list.
Yeah, Mr. Treasurer, that's very much my theory here. We have the formal voting presences, but at the same time, the task of getting this off the ground really falls to everyone. What I'd like to do, and I'm mindful of time a little bit, and I don't want to delay ourselves out of this. But what I'd like to do is have a discussion of legislative intent and issuance options. We've had most of that, but just a quick review. And then, Mr. Treasurer, if you want, let's take a look at your timeline, discussion of steps, milestones, deadlines, and we can kind of go through there. And then, as is on our agenda, I would like to have a bit of a discussion on what a consultant's going to look like, what an executive director might look like. Maybe those are tied together. And if we get to a marketing study, you know, we can get there, next, so, and then I also want to leave time for public comment.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chairman, I guess between now and June. Between now and June 20th, I'd like to have all of the commissioners appointed.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that's when I certainly agree with Senator Rothus about, you know, getting the director duties and the director online as fast as possible. And that means that we get their duties, we get the JCQ, we get that to HR, and HR gives us a job classification. And we'll have to have a little bit of discussion about, you know, when we get that job classification, it'll be a management position. We've got a budget, we've got to try to figure out where we want to come in on a salary basically, I think what we have for a budget, half the salary is going to be a volunteer basis almost. But that being said, I think those two things really have to get moving in that. And I think to your thing about the legal thing, I think a lot of that goes into, could be handled in the aspect of a rules subcommittee, and that could be a rule/compliance legal. And that committee could kind of take those three aspects and move forward in that regard. So I guess the sixth, what I really wanted to try to do was just as I said, and I think we've got in general agreement, was the director what they do, and you find the token parameters. Token parameters. I think that, and when we do that, I think we put a timeline on the token parameters also. Because some of the functionalities and the partnerships and different things that you might want to do on point of sale and different things, and things that we may or may not be able to partner with our community banks and our banking industry. Those are things that will probably be that we might want to include in the parameters, but implementation, so you have what you want, and then you have an implementation aspect of the parameters also.
All right.
Yeah.
Sure, let's appoint subcommittees. So to the and we're I guess we're gonna kind of walk away from the agenda for a while. First subcommittee is the token parameters. Mr. Chair, I recommend that you go ahead and chair that, and why don't you appoint your committee? Okay. The problem is that will probably do a great job on rules and legal and all of that aspect. I'd love to have her on the tokens committee, but I'm gonna let you have for your rules and compliance and committee. But yeah, go ahead.
Kind of like we're on the playground trading players.
Actually, I take this really quite seriously. I think token parameters is the primary concern. I think that's what Chris recommended.
Yes,
and I think
absolutely. Well, if that's the case, Mr. Chairman, then I would pick Plavla and we'll get started on that.
Yep. Do you have the other members of your committee? If you'd like to have those appointed today, I think, right?
Yeah. And I guess I looked at probably Brian and Joe.
Okay. All right. Minutes. So treasurer will chair. Flavia will serve on it, and you have Joel.
Brian.
And Brian. Okay. Madam Auditor, would you like to chair the subcommittee on the director.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to do that. Sorry, I just had seen that. And just to be clear, these subcommittee members will serve, but could still potentially be appointed actually to the commission as well. I can do that. What's your desired size of the committee?
I think that's entirely up to you.
I would like Mr. Pope on my committee. If that's okay.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's something perhaps Mr. Wallace would be interested in serving on, or if that's not quite the right fit. I'm certainly open to other suggestions.
Volunteers.
Madam Chair or Madam Auditor, I'd be happy to serve on that committee as well.
Mr. Chairman, I would love to have you serve on my committee.
Might also consider your status.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps Senator Rothfuss would serve.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be honored to serve. I should probably be a non-voting member of that subcommittee from the separation of power standpoint, but I'm happy to participate honestly in both committees as a non-voting member from a constitutional standpoint.
Okay.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, I would note that the legislation requires this commission ultimately select and compensate the director, so I'm assuming
Yes.
your recommendation for the subcommittee.
No, I think these subcommittees provide recommendations to the commission.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, as we've also discussed, I'm happy to have the blockchain center staff and students be resources for both of these committees for research and other things, especially considering how time is of the essence. So either please feel to reach out. Number of students here today that are here specifically because they want to assist as much as they can. So I want to make those resources available.
Thanks. And Steve, from my standpoint, I wanted to have you on my legal compliance, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm happy to serve in any way, sir.
Along with Flavia, who is gonna have lots to do. Probably also Mr. Wallace. Because I think that is critical. Trying to think who might be another addition. I might reach out to Chris Land and see if he might in some capacity be able to participate in that particular.
It's good.
Since he has a background.
Good.
All right.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, are you open to amending the list of subcommittee members at a later date, maybe adding to them?
If somebody wants to jump on the token parameters one, you guys let me know. We'll see. Most of the stuff I think is going to be done by Zoom. So, to the extent you guys can give me all that information, so we can get on that.
Very good.
If Charles or one of his representatives wants to be on there, that's fine with me.
And just a follow-up question for Mr. Chairman. Just thinking here, because we understood that the committee, the subject matter experts would be conflicted out. We just want to make sure that we had a clarifying question as to whether subcommittee members would also be conflicted out. I'm not sure that that's been raised yet.
Go ahead, Ms. Monger, who's our subject matter expert in this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, the subcommittee members, because they don't vote or have any authority, they would not be.
Yeah, thank you.
recommendation.
So Brandy, and I guess I'm just curious about this, as I remember the statute requires that you identify if you believe there could be a potential issue, and you remove yourself from voting for these members and any voting member. But in a subcommittee, probably just identify that.
And actually in the ethics, Mr. Chair, in the Ethics and Disclosure Act, that actually specifically takes out those sort of subcommittee and advisory members. It's only board members who have voting. So, and then yes, you do have to identify.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd hope that, you know, the parameters of subcommittee, after we get that fleshed out, that we look at the other aspect that with that knowledge that we gain and bring in coding and look at maybe making, a short list of vendors for implementation that can, at another date, we'll bring maybe a recommendation on that aspect. Yeah.
So, Madam Auditor.
Just one note, particularly on the subcommittee where you and I are members, I think this might be a case for going ahead and appointing some commission members today, because without that, we still have our public meetings issue where we only have 3 commissioners, and you and I, or you and the treasurer, or the treasurer and I cannot meet. So in essence, for the attendees, we only have 3 commission members. No 2 of us can get together without noticing it as a public meeting. If we get the total up to 5, I assume at least today, then those, although again, we do have to be careful to make sure we have enough members to not have it be problematic with our subcommittees.
So, with that, Madam Auditor, do you have a suggestion as to members of this commission? I'm happy to go to the vote. My point is someone's going to be left off the list. I don't think anybody can feel badly about that, but there is always going to be somebody who's going to be disappointed.
Mr. Chairman, I believe, well, and I'm happy to make a motion.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would move that Mr. David Pope, Ms. Flavia Naves, and Mr. Zach Wallace be included as commissioners, and I would start with that. And if that doesn't work, I'm happy to separate them.
Okay.
I would second that.
So that's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, you're all appointed to the commission. So we can either proceed and decide between Mr. Lavelle and Mr. Bishop, or we can leave it open. Whatever your pleasure is. To the point that the good senator made, there may be something down the road that may reveal itself. So I'm not arguing in any particular fashion. These are always uncomfortable.
And Mr. Chairman, please someone back up my map here, but as it stands right now with our recent action, we would have 7 commissioners, meaning in theory 3 could get together.
Who would be the 4th?
Oh, sorry, I guess we only have 6.
She's the auditor.
Well, clear though, I'm suffering from a head cold, so it's a little fuzzy today. So Mr. Chairman, I guess we do potentially still have a problem
So Brandy, just a quick question on that, or with Margaret. If there are three of a six-member commission, does that constitute a quorum?
Or not.
Chair, we were just trying to figure this out. If it's, there's a statutory provision that relates to this. I'm just trying to track it down. So we can figure that out.
I'm pretty sure that you have to have a quorum to do business. A quorum of 6 is 4. In
Yeah, that's
for any
the way
legislative meeting, that's how we operate. I can't imagine it's different under the public meetings law.
Yeah, it's actually within 9 somewhere. Where it
Okay.
talks about board membership as a default, but I do think it's a majority, so it should be
So
fine.
we'll look at.
Yeah, I think you're probably in good shape with 6, and as long as you didn't have 4 assembled, you probably would be okay. Hopefully 9 is the same as legislature.
Okay. All right. Very good.
I want to make sure, is Charles going to be on this one or on this committee or not? Or you
I'd be happy to follow up with you on that.
Follow up on that, okay.
Especially when we understand what subcommittees we have, we can easily add qualified personnel to each.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my sense is we will also publish this on each of the websites. So that I'm going to avoid legislative intent and move on to milestones, deadlines. And where do you put out a timeline?
I think I had the 12 feet or 16 feet of whiteboard I got to work with, so that was fun. June 6th is today. I think we've substantially met all the things that we wanted to do on the 6th. On June 20th, I wanted to make sure that we went through, and at that time, we want to approve the director JCQ. And I got approved the stable token vendor. I think I'm a little premature on that because we'll probably have to move that into like July 1 or something. I just don't see us getting all of this stuff done at that time. And hopefully we'll be able to post a director position. And that requires, I think, a lot of help with you, Mr. Governor, trying to get that classification posted as soon as we can. Got final appointment and approval of additional commission members on the 20th. And what days we have one? Yeah, which we only need one more. So, and the director interview subcommittee members, in which probably I think the best group on that would probably be the people that did the director's duties. So because you kind of have a good idea about what that is. And now the interview subcommittee, they won't probably have to meet until looking at July 20th to August 1st, somewhere in there. The earlier the better, because we got 30 days that we have to post the position. And I think that's the minimum. Is it, or is it 45? I think it's a minimum of 30. I'm not sure.
Mr. Chairman, and I guess maybe the treasurer brings up a good point. Where this is an at-will position that serves at the pleasure of this board, I don't have a good understanding of whether it would fall under all the HRD regulations or not. I would think that maybe it wouldn't, but I don't know.
I know that, you can say it's a sole source and, but if you post it, so I guess what I'd say is that for that committee to really, review the flexibility that might be afforded by the agency that's under the governor's purview. Okay. So,
And Mr. Chairman, I would note.
Mark can pull some strings sometimes, but he can't break the rules of the law. So, but.
I would note we are under a hiring freeze technically.
Yeah, so we won't be able to hire you until July. Yeah.
Okay.
So essentially, we want to get the director on board as soon as possible. The normal schedule, I think, brings that sometime in the first day of the August 10th. But we might be able to move that up. We want to, I think, after we get the token defined, we need to earnestly start working on the rules subcommittee and move forward with that. And that's one that's yet to be appointed. So
I think it's in place.
the same ones that, okay, that's fine. Yeah, okay, so then we'll work on the rules, move forward on that. And I've got basically the first day the director is seated, I got them working on a subcommittee Zoom meeting on rules. August 1st, I got the AG negotiates, prepares contract for implementation, and that's on selecting the stable token vendor. So basically the committee that's on defining token parameters and that, we want to make sure that on August 1st that we've got recommendations to the board for stable token vendors. And I'm sure there'll be quite a few that will shake out. And when we get into that, Mr. Chairman, I think you may find that we don't have a budget to do that, and then we have to find out whether or not if there's some construct of a forward contract that based on some parameters that people could get paid if we don't have the budget to do it. Or we look at bifurcating the contract and we're just doing a simple minting job or something, and that other functionalities go to a later date. So we'll have to do some negotiation with the vendors and see what we can get for what we have, with the understanding that the add-ons will probably be, budget determined at a later date. Looking at September 1, I got the commission reviews rules. Director begins work on the legislative report that's due October 1st. And the AG approves I've got the coding or vendor contract by September 1st. And another marketing subcommittee for a Zoom meeting on September 1st. It slows down a little bit because we want to start coding as soon as we can. And we're really not going to get much to look at. I wanted to do a test, begin testing by November 1st, because December 31st, we're supposed to have the coin minted, but I'm hoping that we can get the testing done and do a coin minting on the 15th.
It strikes me December 1st is when we're supposed to indicate whether we are able to issue.
Right, yeah, that's the report here that we're coming through. But we're looking at, the little, but I think we're gonna have people coding on it before we issue the report. It's gonna be out at the end of the year. But, these were all things that I put down on paper. I don't know how many of them are doable. There's people out there that know a lot more about this than I do as far as the timelines. I've had people from India tell me they can do it in 3 weeks, so
Steve.
No, just small corrections, November 1st, that the legislation requires the Attorney General to respond.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have to have
report
a clear idea of when we issue.
Just one note on our discussions regarding commission members versus subcommittee members, and I apologize. We probably should have brought this up before everybody volunteered to serve. The legislation does enable us to pay expenses of commission members, but not subcommittee members. So that would be on their own dime, which you know, I'm sure there's a lot of opportunity to be virtual and not have to have travel expenses, but just wanted to make that very clear. You know, those individuals actually appointed to the commission, we are able to pay their travel expenses.
Mr. Chairman, nothing I didn't put in here because I figured we were just gonna do it in our chat, and that was the aspect of you know, the custody of the treasuries. And so I think that partly falls under your purview in that area there. I'm sure that we can get a report you know, and look at all of the different things that we do to mitigate risk, and how we intend to make sure that we always have that at least 100% in there. So we'll do that in our office without being said, and you just tell us where you want to report it.
Very good. Questions, comments? It's an ambitious schedule. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your staff's work on this. And I'm sure we'll have updates on the timeline as we proceed.
And I guess for the folks that don't have my address or whatever, and my phone number, it's 307-823-2366. Again, that's 823-2366. And all of our emails are about the same, but my name is Kurt.Meyer. My email at wio.cog. That's CURMEIER. So is that Fabula? Did I say that right? Flavia? Okay, thank you. I'll get it. Okay. Now, you said you were from Brazil. I spent about 3 weeks down there in the early part of my life in the 80s. Beautiful country.
So one thing that we have, and maybe Mr. Treasurer, you have the expertise to do this, but we had at one point talked about the value of a consultant to help build a business plan. And at this point, right, you know, you've pretty much outlined how we issue. But is there a business plan that we need to have, and is there a consultant that we need to think about before we start hiring a director? Or do we want to hire a director and in tandem a consultant? Is a consultant even necessary? We have the expertise in the state to be able to do.
You know, I think there's a person, I think you mentioned the name earlier, but we'll, I guess, talk about if this person was able to, I think, be a consultant for us. I think that would make sure that we weren't going, you know, 3 steps forward in the wrong direction and then have to go back to 0. So, you know, I think that the folks that we have here are definitely subject matter expertise, so they're going to keep us on track. But that's hiring. I think when you look at hiring a director, it might be, you know, that person could double as a consultant if you get the right person.
I think to stay to this timeline, that's about what you'd have to do. But that also begs the question. Maybe we're ready to beg that question. But I guess I bring that up. If you hire a consultant, that puts a kink in the timeline.
I would put director / consultant. I would try to make that a purpose position, and looking at it, that's more money that we could put toward that position.
Mr. Chairman, I think it also puts a kink in the timeline just simply because and recognizing I have no understanding whether a consultant would come in at $10,000 or $10 million, knowing it would be neither of those, but somewhere in the middle. I don't know that we can afford to do both of those.
Yeah.
with the money we have now. Or maybe we can, but I don't know. I don't know what bank we will get for the money we have right now.
Well, we have new members of the commission, so putting you all on the spot. I'm gonna go to Flavia first, and your thoughts on both timeline, whether consultants necessary. And then I'm gonna move to David Pope and then Mr. Wallace. So Flavia, you have the floor.
Governor Flavia did have to leave early.
Okay, so, all right.
The governor sent me a note saying that she was continuing to work with this.
Okay.
Had to drop off.
Okay, well, great, that's mindful of time, so. Mr. Pope. And Mr. Pope, if you want to, feel free to come up here as can Mr. Wallace, because I think it probably you're fully appointed at this point.
Yeah.
And in fact, we could take a break if you want to shift around, or you can speak right now if you'd like to.
Okay, just a quick comment there. The timeline is aggressive, but it needs to be aggressive. The second comment is that really what we're looking for by I think it's December 1st is a minimum viable product. So I don't believe it's too aggressive to be able to come up with that. The business plan itself can be created concurrently, and as far as having a consultant, I don't know that we need one. I believe we have the resources, both in the commission and the subcommittees, and plus people in the room here where we can create a good business plan that certainly might need to be amended as we go and as new facts come to light and everything, but I believe we can do this.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. And I look at the mission of this being really perhaps threefold. One is to issue a coin. That's the stated task that's before us. But in issuing a coin, I do not want to endanger in any way Wyoming's regulatory prominence. And third, I don't want to damage the reputation of any institution in Wyoming. So I think those three things are quite key.
Mr. Chairman, I absolutely agree. That's the midst of which we have to look at everything. I mean, it's those three objectives beyond the profit or loss from a business.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my first question is, I'm not sure, is the budget 500,000? Is that what the legislature called for?
That's what we've been given.
Okay.
We're in Wyoming. We can do anything.
Well, if we can do this for $500,000, I think that's an accomplishment. I think a lot of the things that we're trying to get accomplished right off the bat, with even defining the token and that sort of thing, I think the director or the consultant needs to be brought in pretty quickly, so they're part of that whole decision and how that's made. So I guess, my thought is we would need to get, I know you got to go through the whole hiring process. It can take several months. So, are there even consultants out there consult how to make a new state? I guess probably not a huge field right now, but I'm sure there's somebody we can find to help us. So I guess my thought would be to we need to get somebody in here sooner rather than later, so they can have an input on all of this. And they can, also put their name in as a potential director.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, I'm gonna recommend we take just a brief break and then we'll kind of. Yeah. Chris got around so much. And Steve, thank you. Your students did a phenomenal job. I see this, I'd like to recognize them. I don't know if all of them are here. They look like some of them came and left.
But this meeting in particular, Governor, it was Haley and Candace Riser that helped support them.
You know, one of the reasons why I hoped that the university would be a good venue for this, and I think we've learned a couple of things about I guess, technology here, but one of the reasons is because the university really has invested a lot of resource into blockchain. I think we're the first university to have blockchain as a major. So you know, with your blessing, I would like to try to hold as many of these meetings here as we can. I think there were a couple of problems with people hearing here in the room, so but maybe we can look at a venue, but I didn't know how you all felt about it. It's nice to get out of Cheyenne. So,
Mr. Chairman, I would agree.
okay.
And Governor, it would be our honor. So.
Fabulous.
And Governor, I like walking 6 blocks to get here.
We can do it around the state, Chris, you know. So with that, we've covered quite a bit of territory today, and I know it's been a fairly long day. There may be a couple more things that we want to do. I'm going to kind of let members of the commission kind of speak up now that we have a full panel. But I do believe that you know, we have some tasks laid out for us in the future. I don't know if there's any. What I'd like to do is allow panel members to speak and add some things, and then I want to open it to the audience. If there is something more that we need to do, we can certainly do that. But the part of this is really more kind of just wrapping up this first meeting. So, Madam Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I know this is a commonly used phrase, but I definitely feel like we are trying to eat an elephant here. And so I think we have started out well in trying to take a couple of bites over the next month to bring us to the next meeting. I'm super excited to have the folks on board that we've already appointed. I've been eager, as confident as you and the treasurer are, I've been eager to have some industry folks on board as well, so.
I think she's talking about us.
You're talking about us?
And Mr. Chairman, I look forward to the subcommittees getting to work.
Very good. Mr. Treasurer.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I've got to say, I've worked on some committees with the auditor. She puts her full force and time behind it. She's done a great job in the wayfinding committee, and it's really been a stellar co-chairman in that regard. So I think that there's a good chance she'll outshine us all. But with that said, this is an aggressive, I guess, schedule. I think we can do it because I know I think that the expertise that we have in Wyoming, that we've been dealing with this topic as a leader for, you know, God, ever since I was in the Senate, and that's a long time ago, you know. So I think this is hats off to the resiliency of Chris Rothis and his blockchain committee, and coming up with a structure that I think will actually serve the state well. And I want to say to the banking industry, I'm going to try to figure out how this can make you guys stronger and actually make you more money than you think it ever possibly could have. The state is really just going to be someone it helps facilitate, you know, your success in the success of Wyoming. That's our goal, and I think that we could do that. I can't get a smile out of my cousin's face back there yet, but he's still frowning. Yeah, okay, we'll make it work, guys. Yeah.
Mr. Pope. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am honored to be part of the commission, and I have wanted to help this process along for a very long time. The seeds for this were planted back in 2018 on the first blockchain task force. And what I really appreciate is Senator Rothfuss for carrying that part of the dream forward. When we figured back then there would be no way we could have anything resembling a Wyoming currency. It excited me to no end last year when it came forth as a bill, and now that it's reality, I am still as excited as I ever was. So thank you all.
Great, Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And likewise, David, honored to be part of this commission. I'm not sure I know exactly what I'm getting myself into, but we will get there. I think, like I said, I think crypto has a lot of potential, and I know there's a balancing act here. So if I end up making both sides mad at me, then I'm probably doing a good job. Hopefully, I can contribute, and I look forward to moving this process ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. I'm gonna, for the record, note that, and I guess probably include Betsy or Brandy, these are the comments that we received, a variety of comments, some very helpful suggestions, some please don't ever go there, and other kinds of comments. So I think, clearly people in Wyoming are awake. So Brandy, I guess what I'm going to ask is that we'll leave that comment section open. Can that be kind of a part of the record going forward? You're indicating yes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to leave the expressions of interest for commissioners? You went up to 4 and you pointed 3. Do you want to leave that open for others to continue to express their interest? Or do you think you've got enough candidates that you would like to?
Madam Auditor and Mr. Treasurer, you were, Madam Auditor, you made the motion, Mr. Treasurer, you seconded it. My view, I don't see any, I mean, with the corrections that we have of people who, for one reason or another, are not eligible, I don't have any problem with taking any of the others that haven't been selected and leaving them on that list and leaving that list open to you.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think, I don't really know a lot of those folks that well on that are still left on the list. I think that probably all of them are fine as far as the functionality that we need. But if other people want to be part of it by leaving it open, it gives us more people for subcommittees and more people, more expertise that would help the functionality.
Mr. Wallace and Mr. Pope, any particular issue with doing that?
I concur.
Okay, great. We'll leave that open then. So with that, if there is no other specific business to come before us that takes motion or something else, I would like to open. I think during the interim we had lots of little conversations. I think that shows the fertility of this topic. And I think all of us will take that away, but I did want to provide an opportunity for the public to address us if they so feel. Yes, please come up and.
Worthington, and I'm a computer scientist, and my interest is in digital currency. Actually, I'm one of the few people in the world that's got a patent on digital currency. I have written a book called Beyond Bitcoin and the Future of Digital Currency. And
can you speak up just a little bit?
Sure. Sorry.
Right.
So I've written a book called Beyond Bitcoin, Future of Digital Currency. And right now I'm working on a book called Perfect Money. So I'm very interested in digital currency. And I really see an opportunity here for Wyoming to absolutely dominate the digital currency world and to be extremely innovative and be a place that just draws this whole industry into the state. And I think it can be done with using the Center of Blockchain and digital innovation and using students here to program it. And starting with the desirable characteristics of tokens that was mentioned, you want to have a currency that is free, that doesn't have fees, that is, environmentally friendly, very low energy usage, a currency that hopefully is difficult to lose or cannot be lost, difficult to steal, something that transacts in a millisecond, something that can handle and scale the entire world's population, transactions, something that is easy to integrate with merchant systems, also with banks. You want to make banks more powerful so that they can do their lending much more effectively. And one of the most important things is privacy. So privacy is something that the US dollar has, and it makes the US dollar very valuable because we can take these dollars and trade them all over. And we have the privacy by doing that. And so something that all information systems need is confidentiality. Privacy is very important. So I'd like to suggest an algorithm that would create a new currency. Let's call it a Wyoming currency. This algorithm, I believe, would dominate or put Wyoming in a position to dominate all of the currencies, all of the digital currencies of the world. And the way that it works is it's file-based. And so I've got a file. That file has a serial number and a bunch of passwords in it. If I have that file that I'm getting, and if I want to buy something, I'm going to give you that file, and now you have all the passwords. Anybody with the passwords can change them, and so you just change the passwords, and now you're the new owner. This system would require, I would say, 25 passwords in this file. And the reason why we need 25 is because every county would have a server. Every county would have independent system administrators that run the system so that there's no systemic risk of failure. So these would be independent servers that each have a separate password. Also, the governor's office would have a server, and so would the university, so they could use that for research and take a look at how things are going on the computer. The value of this is that it's just a simple update. We're changing the password. This is so simple that we can do it energy efficiently. In fact, Wyoming would have the most energy efficient digital currency in the world. It's so efficient that it could be done by the millions and be the most scalable digital currency in the world. And that we could add more servers to make it faster, and we could add more powerful servers to make it faster so that it can scale up. Also, these transactions happen so fast that because of the speed of light, it would also be the fastest digital currency there is, transacting in less than a third of a second. Now remember, you don't have to have a user account or log in to do these things. I just have the file, I give them to you. And so what this does is it creates the world's most private currency that there is. And we can make it work with the banking system and the merchants quite easily, because we can have a system in which I call cloud lockers. This is where we have all of these different servers in the counties, and I want to spend my coins. I put the coins in these lockers, takes a split second, and I get a locker key. With the locker key, I'm going to give that to a merchant, and they're going to then go this locker and download all of those coins. And because it's just a simple code, a simple key, it can be transferred with a cell phone. You can key off there. It can be transferred using an app. It can be written down on a piece of paper. I can tell you verbally what the code is. It's just a 7-digit code. And I can also send it by email or internet. The thing is so simple that the software development is very easy to do. That it can be done using a browser plugin to make it work on all different systems. And it could be done in time for the deadline. And it would totally revolutionize digital currency to put this campus on the map as well as this state. So I wish you luck. We've got a lot of innovations. So I wish you those. And even if you don't succeed, you can still create currency. And it's important.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions? Great. I very much appreciate your comments. Yes, sir.
Thank you to the commission and to the staff and to the team and everybody helping organize this. My name is JJ Seiler. I work at Input Output, which is a software development firm. There's been a lot of excellent points raised so far. The Merchant Advisory Group, the banking community here in Wyoming. There's a lot of different stakeholders represented here, and I think it's really important because we are making history. It feels important, you know, if some items feel a little bit uncertain right now, it's also because we're making history. There's a lot to discuss here. I'm here with Karen Wheeler and a couple members here from Wave Digital Asset Management, and we work with in close association here. And we live and breathe protocol development. So Input Output has developed ADA, which is one currency. It's worth about $15 billion right now. At its all-time high, it was worth about $45 billion. We did specification development for a stable token called JED. So we did the research and the initial outline for it. A firm called Cody actually launched a token. It's worth about $15 million right now. And it's live, and it's not available in the US right now, but it's a global currency right now. So we have both of those things are built on a highly decentralized blockchain called Cardano. It's as decentralized as Bitcoin, which not many chains can actually say. And we can talk about this more. But my goal here today is to say that we can do this right. We're a Wyoming-based firm. The protocol design that we have for this stable token has a couple of features that are unlike a lot of other protocol designs. There's an abort transaction feature. There's auditing features that would make this superior to any existing stablecoin on the market. So just wanted to mention, we're very excited to lend any expertise that we can offer to the various subcommittees. I understand they're not all established right now, but as soon as they are, we would love to help contribute however we can, and recuse ourselves whenever there might be a possible conflict here. We're very interested in the subcommittees here that have to do with federal regulation and stablecoin regulation too, because the government has drafted a number of different bills, both in the House Financial Services and the Digital Asset Market Structure Act here. So I would certainly recommend, if you're looking at it, I know that you've mentioned it before, regulation and legal considerations should be one of the subcommittees. Just wanted to mention a couple things here. This is a really good business. Stablecoins are incredibly valuable. Lots of private industries have done this. Tether, Cody, as I mentioned, developing JED, Circle. These are very valuable firms. But it's important to make sure that as we're developing a stable token for the state of Wyoming, that this isn't captured by private industry, that this isn't captured by federal regulators, and that this is serving the state of Wyoming first and foremost. It's a big moment for Wyoming. Nobody's ever tried to do this, backing an asset like this with a US state. It's incredibly important. And I think the first principle, and I think I joked about this earlier, first principle should be do no harm. We want to make sure that this is not a disaster. We want to do this in a careful way. And my boss, Charles Hoskinson, had opened up the development of ADA by saying, we need to code this with high assurance code. When lives are at stake, if you're coding something for a bullet train, or if there's billions of dollars at stake, you can't do this haphazardly. You have to use evidence-based research. You have to use evidence-based protocol development, evidence-based development of things like this to really try to make it safe, and so that people can trust serious value with it. Wyoming has really established itself as a forward-thinking state on digital assets. We don't want to lose any ground on this. But I think at the same time, we have to risk a little bit because we diversify the state economy quite a bit. move away from the traditional sectors, oil and gas and agriculture, and really become a financial services sector if we do this right. I think you're going to attract a lot of talent, create a lot of great jobs here. Our firm, Input Output, is committed to developing this here in Wyoming, keeping any jobs related to the development here in Wyoming. We want to bid as low as possible on this to make sure that you understand we're doing this to serve the state. Our firm is based here, and we want to keep it here. So we look forward to innovating. We look forward to partnering with government and trying to contribute whatever expertise we can and helping you create something really amazing here. So thank you for giving me a little bit of time.
Thank you, JJ, and you know, your testimony here, and I also want to thank Wade for coming at both of these meetings. I know some of you have traveled a long way, and just really appreciate your interest and support in this endeavor. I also want to thank Jay for being here as well. Tayson has also been valuable in the conversation on this. So thanks. Are any questions? Hearing none. Thanks. You know, one of the areas that I think is going to be particularly nuanced and difficult, which I think is one of the things that we're going to have to look at, is you know, where is good security advice? God bless our Attorney General. But I think we probably need to think long and hard about, you know, where the attorneys might be that can help advise pitfalls that can arise in federal regulation. And I know Flavia has been through quite a bit of that. Circle's been through quite a bit of that, but I do think there's still real opportunities there as well. And certainly that's her expertise. So anything else?
Say one thing.
Yep, please, yeah.
Mr. Chairman. I'm David Seymour. Just to, we've spoken a good bit, but just so everyone else kind of hears, I run a company called Wave Financial. We're a crypto asset manager, SEC regulated, and you know, we've been a bridge between kind of traditional worlds and the crypto worlds for a long time. We've operated for a while, and just want to be a resource. You know, there's a lot of things we've invested in, a ton of the earlier stablecoin projects, going back to Tether and several others. We support a lot of things, you know, that Charles does with IOG, Cardano. We think we can be a great resource. We have kind of a good financial lens, being SEC regulated and being a finance company. We also run 3 crypto VC funds that are invested in hundreds, maybe a couple hundred now, different technology startups. Have a lot of expertise there. So just think of us as a resource.
And to that point, you know, a lot of the comments that we have from folks are like, no, we don't like crypto. And it's all, I think, what they've heard over the course of the last year at FTX, some of the stable coins that basically were, you know, got over their skis, investing in very, very, I guess, risky assets. And then now I think some of them ended up in the hole, got their act together. But all of these different things that, you know, gave cryptocurrencies a really, really bad name.
Yeah.
And so how do we differentiate and, you know, in a factual, matter of fact statements, you know, short 2 or 3 statements, the difference between a stable token and a cryptocurrency that they're familiar with?
It's a good question. And you mentioned marketing. There is a lot of, I guess, misconceptions about crypto. Now, not to say that crypto hasn't earned a relatively lousy reputation in this moment, not because of us, but because of a lot of the bad actors that did some really short-sighted things. And a lot of the retail interest in crypto was also very short-sighted. It was a lot of fast money. It was exciting. We were there. You know, we're still here though. We didn't get too sucked into the fast money. And I think it's changing really, really rapidly. I mean, the US, what Gens was doing is you know, detrimental long term. But what the rest of the countries in the world are doing, we operate pretty globally. We have a subsidiary in Geneva that's FINRA regulated. We're acquiring something in Singapore right now.
3 factual statements. Okay.
3 factual statements are, this is, you know, it's all about transparency is what Tether kind of the hill they continue to fail on and why they're not even more dominant than they are. It's about you know, accountability, that these you know beyond the transparency there's accountability, just a good actor. I think it's really important what you guys have done about making a good use of the proceeds you are generating, you know, towards education and other things. And I think just being a state issuer is the biggest part of the marketing message. There is no equivalent anywhere. No country, state, to say the least. I think the first mover advantage for Wyoming is massive. Like once one state does this, it can help USD become a reserve currency of the world. There isn't much value in another state doing it. I think this is, stable coins have been a little bit winner take all, and there's hundreds of them, but one of them is 70%.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I think that people are afraid of is their privacy and the government getting a hold of everything that they do. And I'm wondering, once we get this thing up and running and we've got our protocols on privacy, I'm wondering if we actually enshrine that in our Constitution, that would let people know that that the legislature is going to meet, and next year they're gonna know every place that they bought a 223 bullet in the last 20 years.
Exactly. That's you've always spent a lot of time thinking about this. That is exactly the crux of most of the problem. So Tether, I was the first investor in Tether. They have a chain and they could literally delete your assets, and they have deleted. I remember they've been a pack. They did go in and delete the bad guys' assets. They could do it to the good guys too. And yeah, so privacy I think is a really paramount aspect of this. I'm kind of impressed to hear a government official go with that direction, because usually the government kind of goes the other direction of knowing what people do. But I think that could be a very powerful message for this new project as well.
Welcome to Wyoming.
Yeah, I'm from California. It's a little different.
Thank you for your candor on that. I appreciate that.
No, thank you. And again, anything we can do to help, sounding boards or questions, we're definitely here to help with the project.
Fantastic. Ms. Anderson.
The next part of the brain, not leave without your next meeting. Let's not leave without your next meeting, setting the next.
Right, okay.
But there may be more public comment. I don't know.
Sure, please. We got Mr. Meyer. Here's the board.
Members of the commission, Scott Meyer on behalf of the Wyoming Bankers Association, and I have with me, as you've already met, Ms. DeVore from Jonah Bank. I've also have with me right behind me is several of our Wyoming banks. You've already met Mr. Wallace, who is now one of your commissioners, which is great. I have back there Brandy Dunham and Mike Peck from First Interstate Bank, and we have not only Kim here, but we have Mike Williams from Jonah Bank, and we had until just recently one of my co-chair or my vice chairman for our board of directors, Ann Nelson, who's with FNBO. The point of having these folks here is to let you know that this covers a wide spectrum of Wyoming banks. Our community banks, small, medium, and large, and even the largest ones act like community banks here. My concerns are about what's going on and how this impacts our Wyoming banks. And I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman, when you said, here are our three things. Well, issuing the coin is not my big concern. But you did say, do not damage our regulatory framework, which is very important to us. And do not damage our Wyoming institutions, which is very important to us. So really, as we look at this stuff and listen to what's going on here, you folks are delving into our world, this finance world. That's what we do. So we want to be involved in the conversation. We want to be involved in the discussion. We want to know what's going on and how we can either guard against whatever we see is coming or help where we can necessarily do that. But I want to point out one thing, and we've looked at this stuff and I've saw the timeline and everything. We're going to talk about getting a business plan. Okay. I don't know what that business plan is, but in every business plan I've looked at, you're either going to investors or you're going to a bank or you're going to wherever and you're trying to show your business plan. You're trying to show what your business is about and what is in need. Either you have a product or a service that is not being made available, or you have a product or service that you think you can do better. I'm anxious to see your business plan. Because right now, as I look at this thing, what you're trying to offer is something that is already being provided in your private sector. I don't know what this commission is going to do. I don't know what the state of Wyoming is going to do, but the last thing I heard was, back in the day when we were talking about in the blockchain committee and we had some of these conversations, the whole idea of this thing was this is gonna be a stable token that can be used in sovereigns. Now I'm hearing all sorts of discussion. We've got point of sale, we've got things that are gonna be at the retail level. That's what banks do. So what are you looking at and what problem are you trying to solve? And we see where that's going. The other question that I have is, what about these revenues? What revenues are you thinking you're going to generate? Is it going to really be off the T-bills? Are we going to have so much T-bill money out there that we can do this? Yeah, SVB and what happens with T-bills when you overextend? And I know you brought this up in your last meeting, and I know that it's there, but it would appear to me that once you've already heard of SVB, Silvergate, Signature Bank, First Republic, and then you start talking about the tokens that are out there. You've got FTX. I'm sure you heard of a couple of days ago that the SEC came down, on Binance. Today it was Coinbase. When you look at that, I think that what it would appear to me that the federal regulators are starting to say, no more of this monkey business in this world. So I don't know how you're going to deal with that when it talks about federal regulation. And it causes me concern because I think that people don't realize how much power the feds really have. We're starting to see that, I guess, with one of our own speedy banks in their litigation. And the feds have a lot more power than maybe we want them to have, but they have that power. So coming down on doing a speedy bank, doing a stable token makes me wonder, where are we going to go with this? So we are concerned as your community banks, how this works. I've already explained it to several people. They think, oh, great, Wyoming banks will be involved in this stuff because what? They're going to come to the bank, they're going to buy a token, they're going to give us money. We go to the state, we give it to them, we get to hold that money. No, we don't. That goes back to the state. They buy T-bills with that money. There's no benefit in there unless we charge fees. And really, is that what we're all about? Or are we providing something to the public? Are you providing something that I can't do, my banks can't do? Really, when you look at the definition of the banks and you start going through this, last week we heard the commission say that Wyoming stable token would not be the state's own currency, just a representation of the US dollar held in trust by the state of Wyoming and investing in short-term treasury bills. That's banking. That's what we do. So I'm like, what is it that you guys are doing that I can't do? And I'm really anxious to see that business report and the business model that you think you're going to have out there that I want to do that. Yeah, last thing I want to say, and I'll tell you, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to say this as delicately as possible, and I don't want to be offensive. But the comment that I heard last meeting, when we start talking about these T-bills and what's going on, the comment that I have is that, well, you know what? It's unfortunate that our banks weren't doing it that way. They got a little bit over their skis and they got greedy, and I think in certain circumstances that's the case. That is not us. Wyoming banks are not greedy. They didn't get over their skis. They were not involved in this stuff. And I'm really sitting there thinking, what is this commission doing? Is it attacking my industry? Because I'm really concerned about it. So, Mr. Chairman, I will tell you, I'm really happy to hear about that you don't want to damage the integrity of our regulatory framework and that you don't want to damage our institutions. We are going to be watching, but we are concerned because Wyoming banks are the ones that support this small businesses. Every dollar that you turn around and somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to spend that money on a token. Okay, maybe there's a legitimate reason, but if it's just to put it in there, that's money that doesn't stay in the bank. You've all seen the movie, It's a Wonderful Life. You know what that is. That money isn't there. It's over there in that person's house and that person's business. That's what we do to finance this stuff. So by taking money out of the system, because we think it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be easier, I don't think that works. There's already the Fair Credit Card Competition Act that's going on there right now in Congress. And we're looking at this going, this has happened before. If we do this token, I've already heard the comment, we can cut the fees on these credit cards. They've already proved, statistics prove that didn't happen one bit when they've done this. What happens is that the merchants and the processors kept the profits. It didn't benefit the consumers. If your whole idea is to make sure that we benefit those merchants, let's just be out and say it. I don't want to be in a position where I'm having to justify why we're not doing the business for Wyoming and their consumers and our small businesses. So With that, Mr. Chairman, I would certainly stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer, and just to be responsive a little bit. You know, one of the concerns here is whether the dollar's hegemony is at risk. And you know, it was not, I think about a year and a half ago, that Harvard and MIT held a gathering, and out of that they said, look, if the Federal Reserve cannot figure out how to issue some sort of digital asset, they will lose out to China. And we are in a global arms race on that front. I think the points you make are very, very good. But we have a very stodgy Fed, as you know, which is, and I serve on it. And Jeff has been on one of the branches. If we don't look at other forms of settlement, we will be in trouble. And I would suggest to you that there are plenty of forms of settlement other than just cash transactions. And so from my standpoint, I don't see this, I hope, as any kind of direct competition. And what I really would like to see is how the Wyoming banking sector, and to your point, I can't think of any Wyoming community bank that was systemically important and posed a risk to the entire financial system. As a matter of fact, you know, people could have looked at what happened with AIG and dealt with it differently. And we don't know if that would have been better or worse, but we do know what we did made big banks bigger and more systemically important, more important to do stress testing. When I think about what little banks have to do in order to get to compliance with the regulatory system at this point, they are at a disadvantage. I mean, it's marginal for a very large institution, and we need big banks and we need small banks. I'm not saying that, but that increment is marginal for larger banks to be compliant with regulation. It is potent for a smaller bank.
Absolutely.
And our Wyoming banks, I feel, are at a disadvantage, and I want to figure out any way we can to lift that sector. So.
And for what I wanted to speak about, that's actually a really good lead-in, Governor, because I would agree, we are at a disadvantage. And we operate in that world on a daily basis. I don't see how the state becoming a competitor with us for the deposits that sit in our banks helps us be more competitive. I don't feel like that is going to put us at a better advantage. Now, I would echo Scott's original comment. I would encourage this commission to start with a business plan. We encourage that to any business out there, but ultimately, I have to be honest, it's been all over the board today. I would ask you the exact same question I asked the Federal Reserve. I was asked to speak on CBDC for the Board of Governors. And the first question I asked them was, what problem are you trying to solve? I believe that you have 50 problems floating around this room. If you ask each person, you're trying to solve a different problem. Your business plan process will get that down to where you figure out what problem are you really trying to solve. When I spoke with the Fed board, I said, okay, and this is out, the Fed has very thoroughly, I know everyone feels like they're stodgy. You have to remember, they are holding the federal banking system in their hands. There's so many more important aspects to the federal banking system than just payments fee and payments. It's a much bigger piece. So they very thoughtfully prepared a research doc. Everyone has access to it. They went out for comment on it. My discussion with them back was, figure out what problem are you trying to solve. In here, they lay out multiple problems. Do we have a broken being. We do not have a broken bank. You guys might not like the federal processes you have to go through, probably as much as you don't like the fact that it will take you 2 months to hire a director because of your own processes. I mean, that's government. But do we have a broken banking system? No, we don't. We have a slow payment system. There's a solution for that. And the beginning of that solution is FedNow. Do we have a financial inclusion problem? A stable coin or a CBDC? Because please don't confuse. You are talking about issuing a CBDC. You don't want to say that because that violates the US Constitution because you don't get to issue a currency at a state level. But ultimately, it's a digital token. It's a representation of a dollar. So do you solve for a financial inclusion problem with that? No. People who are not in the banking system today will not come in because they can bank direct with the federal government or a state. Are you trying to solve a global payment and a global reserve currency problem? That is a legitimate problem. Our payment system stinks as it relates to global payments. It's awful. It's expensive, time consuming, and not trustworthy depending on which country you're. So I would encourage you to figure out what problem are you trying to solve, and your business plan will do that. But please remember, there is a basis of the federal banking system that is glorious. Banks take in deposits. We do so much more than just facilitate payments and sell investments. We lend money, and we lend money to the average Joe consumer. We provide access to their cash to the average Joe consumer. Just so you know, average consumer expects 0 loss exposure on their electronic transactions. You're going to have to solve for that if you want to play in this market. It is not a 0 cost token. There are going to be multiple costs associated with this. Every vendor here today wants you to use their software. That will not be free. It will not be free to audit it. It will not be free to do any of this. There will be a cost. There'll be a cost of marketing. So the first thing you need to figure out is what's your break even? And in today's environment, the other day I was thinking about this. So May 19th of this year, pull up 4-week to 52-week T-bill rates. They're sweet. I mean, it's a great place to operate right now. You can get on a 4-week T-bill rate, it was 5.41. You can make your break even on that. You can cover your costs. You won't deliver a 0 cost token, but you can cover your costs. What about on May 19th of 2020, when that T-bill rate was 0.09%? You need to solve for that and have that built into your business plan before you enter into this market. Because I will tell you, we all operated in, it's not easy at 0.09. But there is a much larger piece of how are we going to lend money out to the average Joe consumer if it is flowing out of the banking system into this disintermediated system. We won't have as much to lend. The average Joe consumer cannot afford to borrow at a capital equity type rate. You can't borrow from the capital markets when you need to borrow $500,000 to buy a piece of equipment for your company. Capital markets are always going to demand market rates. Banks can do this because of the leverage of deposits. You can't go back to the TDOA fund because that's a cost of funds of above 4.5%. Our cost of funds at North Bank is less than 1.5%. That's what makes the banking system operate. That's how you can lend. That's what creates economic development in this state. Businesses thrive in our state because they have the ability to borrow. Like, we don't like it, but those of us who don't have to borrow also can try. But that is built on community banks. Community banks make more than 70% small business loans in the United States. If you take all of this liquidity out of the banking system, you're putting the banking system at risk. So you may not be putting the big guys at risk, but you're putting us at risk. So I think that's an unintended consequence that has to be thought through. It's exactly what the feds were told. That's what we all told them. And that's why they have decided they don't want to operate in the retail payments area. Because it will cause disintermediation in the banking system. So I think there's a lot to be said for being thoughtful and slow. My God, I feel like your timeline is insane and you didn't set that timeline. I understand that, but there are a lot of unintended consequences that really need to be well thought through before this releases.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what if the Fed is ignored as far as a digital asset and either executively or through a legislative process, that digital asset, asset or currency automatically appears on the horizon, and it's used for retail because the federal government wants to know what everybody, I think, does and where they spend all of their money. And what if that does occur? I guess one of the things I think that we're preparing for is that when that actually happens, and frankly, there's people that believe it's going to happen sooner rather than later. And I think that's really going to affect the banking industry if the national government issues a digital currency. And you can go directly to, that digital currency and essentially you get rid of all of your fiat currencies that we have now. You don't have $100 bills anymore. All you got is a digital currency card, and where they don't even need banks anymore because they can put all of that in the basically in a server in the cloud anywhere. And there's no reason for banks. I see, this is something where you're saying that, no, this will never happen. But I think what we're trying to do is offer some optionality into I guess the future that is in question. I think it's in question to a lot of people. As to the assertion that the banking industry isn't broken, it was broken in 2008-9, and that was no fault of your own. It was broken, partially injured, as you pointed out, with the Silicon Valley and First Republic, these different banks that made poor decisions. But I can tell you, I know, what the banks in the state are doing, and yeah, they're not in bad shape. There's a reason why they doubled their TDOA requests this year from what they were last year, and so I guess that's up to $252 million now, a request that we've had. And so I guess it doesn't really impact you as far as your deposits on a digital token if we don't go over 252 as far as the state's balance. Are you really saying we don't need the TDOA program? Well,
no, the TDOA program is an option for liquidity. We have many options for liquidity in the banking system.
Yeah.
In fact, we have them all laid out in a contingency liquidity funding plan, which is required by regulators.
Right.
We have Federal Home Loan Bank, we have TDOA, we have public deposits, we have multiple avenues. It all depends on the pricing. Now, I would tell you the reason the banks came to you to do that is because they wanted to make sure that they brought in as much deposits as possible to make people comfortable to recognize that we were not a Silicon Valley bank. We were not a signature bank. We were not any of those pieces, but it's always a business decision. We don't have any TDOA money
What
at
I'm
the.
trying to say is that we're a partner with you now, we're gonna continue to be a partner.
And I, just because of the lateness of the hour, I appreciate this, a good conversation, and I really do appreciate your comments. And the points you brought to our attention, I think it's all information you need to think through and think carefully about. So I think you really have put forward a problem. So very much appreciated. If there is nothing else to come before us, I would.
If I may.
Yes.
Just, I'll be very brief. If I may speak on support of safe token to.
Yeah, my interest is not to end up in a.
Of course, I'll be very brief. So as a local business and a company that employs 26 people, it has been very difficult to get funding through a traditional finance. But this is not a competing system, I believe. And in fact, I believe that stable token will only increase the capital flow into the state, not out. So it creates an environment through which speed of money is faster. And two, it creates a venture capital that will be willing to put money in where there was none. So in fact, our business is exactly a poster child for that. I had to go to about 40 different venture folks and many of my friends to raise small sum of money, and that was only possible because of crypto, and they were willing to transact in crypto at the very beginning. Of course, they're all U.S. accredited investors, and I think that what's important is for all stakeholders, whether they're banks or technology enthusiasts or auditors or governments, needs to understand and really read what's in the bill. And I think that will really help kind of understanding of what these states' intent are. We went through it, my GC and I went through it, and I made my staff read the entire bit. And I believe that it strikes the right balance. I don't have to say state more in support of it. And furthermore, the intent of the bill, as I understood it from as a private person, is to make it easier to audit the system as well as to allow interagency transfer payments and so on and so forth. So I think the retail and the point of sale is a laudable long-term goal that can be valuable, but ultimately, as was mentioned by a previous commentator, that those things are payment processors' job, and payment processors charge enormous sum of money as a intermediary. So I think that in fact the banks would be benefiting enormously from this stable token implementation, whether it's us or someone else or whatever it is. Yes, the timeline is aggressive, but this is a government that is trying to do something new to make sure that it accounts for many of the potential budgetary problems in the future. Because good governance is necessary, that I do think that this is a wise decision by the legislators and the government involved. I quite applaud it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. If there is nothing else to come before us, I think you get an idea of how interesting this conversation will become at our next meetings. So maybe we'll spend less time talking about who we put on the commission and more time about the meat of the subject. I very, very much appreciate everyone being here today. You were Betsy, what am I next meeting? And it's what?
When would you like to have your next meeting?
What, the 20th?
You did the 20th.
I think 20th of June is when we're having a. Isn't that when we have state loan investment board? Is that just probably we have to check with people's calendars.
Calendar, but
Yeah, you put 20. That's a Tuesday. Yeah,
that's too soon.
yeah.
It's a calendar. Yeah. Week. You got wayfinding. The 28th. What's that look like? Guys.
Wednesday, 28th.
29th, I'm open.
That might be available in the. Oh my God.
It's real free.
Well, let's look at a couple of dates and send that out. Yeah. Further, I think, let's put a view poll or something like that. Okay. And we'll throw that.
Here, we got it. He's got it, yeah.
Okay.
Some pressure.
Yeah.
All right.
We're
Thank
good.
you all.
Seriously, we're good.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second.